I have stories about Rueben Bain, Jeremiyah Love, Fernando Mendoza, Carnell Tate, Monroe Freeling, and more. Let's talk NFL draft, prospects to the pros.
Locked On presents The Portal, the daily podcast covering college football recruiting and everything NIL. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Back into the Portal Podcast, where you get your daily recruiting, NIL, and transfer portal scoop. I'm your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football recruiting analyst. Thank you for making the Portal Podcast your first listen each and every day right here on the nation's #1 sports podcasting network, Locked On. We are brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On for $20 off your first ticket purchase. We're going to be discussing several players across the board and having some fun. But the biggest thing that I want to do today is give you an idea of just how crazy it is for players to not only have fun going through recruiting, but sometimes they're really serious as well. And you can't always read the book by its cover when you first meet a kid that's 16, 17 years old. So I'm just going to give background on several of the guys in the projected first round of the NFL draft. Now, I'm not saying anybody's going higher or anything like that. That's not what this podcast is about. We'll have some fun with it. Although I do support, I'll just make this one statement. I do support Jeremiyah Love as a top 5 pick because from being around him and knowing some people that have been around him since he's at Notre Dame, that kid's a little bit different. Let's just start with Jeremiyah. I met him at the Under Armour All-American game, and he was a very cerebral, straightforward, straight-laced kid, A to B. And I remember speaking to him before the game after I'd seen him at practices and stuff. And he was excited about it. But again, very reserved. Didn't give a whole lot of fanfare in terms of like, I'm going to do this, that, or the other. Just wanted to play. And I remember walking up to him after the game. And Jeremiyah was pretty ticked off. I've got a photo, matter of fact, that I'll put up here. This is him right after I'd spoken to him and I just asked him for a photo. And that's pretty much him in general. Like that's still who he is basically. His facial expression rarely changes. He is right down the middle, but he was PO'd. He only got 3 carries. And I said, man, it's an all-star game. In all-star games, there just aren't a lot of players that get touches. You get a handful because everybody's good. But Jeremiyah is one of those guys that kind of has Jordan traits. He needs to be the one that's getting the ball that kind of leads the way. And he's come out of his shell in the last year or so. Obviously, you could tell by the way he finished some of his touchdown runs at Notre Dame, but he was very serious, and he was a guy that really wanted to stand out and prove his worth. He played at private school in St. Louis. He wasn't somebody that was on the national scene the way some other kids were in the South because there aren't as many scouts where he's at. But he was recruited like everybody else. Like Oregon wanted him, Texas A&M, Michigan, Notre Dame, you name it. They pretty much all wanted him to go to their school, and he picked Notre Dame, I think, over A&M at the end. But the bottom line, he wanted to prove what he could do, and he didn't get that opportunity. That's when I knew that he was a little bit different. No, I'm not saying that I thought that Jeremiyah Love was going to be that guy that ended up being as dominant as he was in college. Like he's one of the best running backs that I've seen at creating big plays with just natural gifts and instincts. But his development, his work ethic, if you've ever seen him like go through bag drills or anything, that kind of demeanor was Jeremiyah when he was in high school. And there was a story, I don't remember if NBC did it or whatever, but somebody did it with his mom and his dad talking about him and his upbringing. Like he was always really particular about everything. That probably helped him with the drills and everything. And I saw that with the Under Armour game. For those that are curious, I'm just kind of going through this with the draft picks. Tom Fernelli of CBS Sports, I got his mock draft up on my screen, and I'm having some fun with it. I'm just going to go through some of his first-round picks, the guys that I know. Fernando Mendoza at number 1. I saw him at the Elite 11. Really unassuming guy, great personality, easygoing, and he just wanted a chance. And at the time, I think he was committed to Harvard or one of those schools, Yale or somebody like that. And he was just happy to have a chance. Ended up going to Cal and obviously transferred his last year to play for the Hoosiers, and they win a title. You would have never known that he thought he was a great player because he was just happy-go-lucky, glad to be competing. He was good at the event, but I never thought he was unbelievable. And it was interesting that he ended up being where he is because he just kept working his craft. I never would have saw this outcome, honestly, and nobody else did either. There are a lot of us there at this event, and it was just, he's good, but nothing that makes you think, oh, he's going to be an NFL player, let alone the first pick by the Raiders. So that's a great story. And again, do not read a book by its cover. After Love, the one that I think is pretty interesting because he's a similar personality, another Midwest guy, is Carnell Tate. I saw him play, and it was for SFE, the 7-on-7 program. Didn't say much, kind of did what he did. But when he went out and made plays, he knew it. Like if you talked to him on the side, he would talk himself up a little bit, but he didn't want to be at the forefront. Kind of like Jeremiyah in that regard of he didn't want to talk it. He just wanted to show you on the field. And I'm totally cool with that. But like Love, technique, advanced in terms of understanding his craft, didn't have any concern whatsoever as it relates to what everybody else thought. He was going to do what he did and make it work. And Carnell went down to IMG, was really good, and continued to just be a dominant player. Speaking of IMG, maybe the biggest personality and one of the more unique stories is Francis Mauigoa. He comes from, I believe, American Samoa, and to put it honestly, he's one of the more fun guys that I've ever been around, and he's massive. He's 340 pounds or something like that coming out of high school. He's lost a little bit of weight here recently. He's listed at 329 here on Fernelli's draft board. So I assume that's what he measured in at the combine. He's got him going 6th overall to the Cleveland Browns. But I knew he was very serious about football and he had a lot of things that he wanted to do, but I didn't know that a guy that was a big jokester like him, liked wearing sunglasses and kind of joking with all of us in the media, that he was that serious when it came to his craft, because we had an event and he went to it there at IMG. It was Future 50 or whatever. And he was working with all the guys at the camp, and he was just dialed in as much as anybody there, regardless of position. The personality that you see away from the field was polar opposite of when he was working. And I'm like, okay, this is a good sign, because from a physical standpoint, Francis is exactly what you're looking for. But I wasn't sure what he was going to be capable of as it relates to his ability to really dial in and be that perfectionist. Then I saw something different. And then when he got to Miami, he started right away. Like Alex Mirabal, the O-line coach there, is not going to take that lightly. He knows what it looks like. And Francis basically walked in and started. So he figured out his craft. And again, do not read a book by its cover. Rueben Bain, another Miami guy. I played at Miami Central, got to know him a little bit. Under Armour game, seeing him at preseason awards things and all that stuff. Always very accommodating. Saw him at a signing thing when he was at Miami at one of the bookstores near campus. Always the same guy. I knew he was really good, and he was a little bit different before game. Like he'd get lathered up, and he kind of fit the profile of a defensive lineman. But I didn't know Rueben from a personality standpoint really that well until I met him and spoke with him some at the book signing. His mom was there just a couple of years ago, and he was just a great guy. And he was just as humble then as he was when he was at Central High School, like going into his junior year of high school. That's when I knew that he had a chance to be somebody special, because once you kind of hit that stardom level, and he'd already kind of reached that from Miami at that point, some guys get a little arrogant. They don't want to talk to anybody. Rueben was the same dude. And I'm happy to say that I got to know him. He's one of my more favorite guys on the board in general. I don't know where he'll go. He's a very fascinating guy, but to say the least, he is just a great person. Congrats to him, his mom, and everybody around him. I think he's going to do really well in the NFL, regardless of his arm length, which, by the way, is one of the more ridiculous things that I've heard. I like watching film personally, but that's just me. When we come back, Monroe Freeling, Caleb Downs, and some more stories. That is next right here on the Portal Podcast.
I'm Clea Butler, host of Locked On Women's Basketball, and this is Mazda's Women's Basketball Snapshot, celebrating the work no highlight reel can ever capture. Number 1 ranked UConn dominated St. John's 85-49 on Sunday at Madison Square Garden, extending its winning streak to 47 games. The Huskies capped a perfect 31-0 regular season, including 20-0 in the Big East. UConn is winning by nearly 38 points per game, the third largest average margin in Division I history. Since 1999 to 2000, UConn has 9 undefeated regular seasons, as many as all other programs combined, and has turned 6 of those into national championships. These moments are earned off the clock, those long before the lights ever come on. The sweat, the fakes, the doubt, the scrapes, and coming back for more every time. Mazda puts that same drive into every detail. Wins define the moment, putting in the work, that defines you. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you.
Thank you once again for making the Portal Podcast your first listen each and every day. And if you want to take your game to the next level, down below in the description, the Locked On Every Dayer Club. $5 a month or $50 for the year. Your audio feed will have no ads. And there is a description below that will describe more. But on that link, we have the Discord for just about any possible podcast you can imagine, any team, whatever it may be. Get to know other fans around all over the Locked On Network. Check out the Discord as well in the link below. Let's talk a little bit more about some of these because I'm just having fun today, and there's no particular order on this, but one of the more fascinating recruits that I've ever met is Caleb Downs. He was from Mill Creek High School just outside Atlanta, and I still remember the day I went to see him. It was pretty warm. I spoke to him at the beginning of practice, watched him go through some drills, and I knew he was an elite player anyway. But speaking with him, this guy's really intelligent and all that. But I didn't know how much he cared about team first. They were doing a drill, like a tackling drill, where they cut off one side or the other, and then you angle the guy down, and you don't give him a three-way go. You don't get right in front of him. Just use an angle. And he did it right, but he went out, and the coaches didn't even mess with him. He went and coached some of the other players on his own. I'm like, a high school kid's doing this? It was bizarre because you just don't see high school guys do it in that manner. They might make a pointer here and there, but like it was detailed. It made it very simple. It was common sense. It was just relatable, even for kids who were like freshmen and sophomores at his high school. And like, okay, this cat's a little different. And I also remember for whatever reason that day, he had purple shoes on. I'll never forget that, but it didn't matter what color his shoes were. He got to the football. He knew where he needed to be, and he got there in a hurry. Caleb Downs is one of the best high school football players that I've ever watched. And quite frankly, I'm glad that I had a chance to be around him because he kind of sets a standard that's a little bit different than most kids that I've ever had a chance to like physically be around and watch him at a practice. Speaking of unusual, Monroe Freeling, he's a kid that was from South Carolina, played at a smaller school. He was kind of on the rise when I first saw him at an Under Armour camp, but at the same time, everybody was curious about him because he was a big guy that could move, and he had several offers. But as far as the scouts go, he played at a program nobody's really going to go to and check out. But when he came to that camp, the way he moved, the way he ran, his personality, again, really nice guy. I'm not surprised that he's projected to go in the first round of the draft. He's a guy that left after his junior year after playing at the University of Georgia, elite player. And to be honest with you, I don't think it's a shock that teams look for people with this kind of personality. Very relatable. Reminds me a little bit of Rueben Bain, a little bit Fernando Mendoza, guys that are just easy to have a conversation with. That makes it easy. And the NFL is very conscious of cell phones, videos. These guys go out in public too, and Monroe's too big to hide. He's like 6'7", 310 pounds or something like that. He's 315 on this draft board I'm looking at. That's important. And I think that he probably aced most of his little tests that he had to take for whichever teams, but I'm sure he's going to do really, really well. Let's go with another one here. Keldric Faulk. This is one of the funnier stories that I'll probably ever tell. He's from Highland Home, Alabama. And if you don't know where that's at, you're like 99.99% of the people in America. It's a very small town in South Central Alabama. And to be honest with you, there's not much going on there. And I stopped by to get a photo of him and his younger brother, who's now at Auburn as well. And I remember having a conversation with him, just talking about football and this and that. And I said, what do you guys do? Because it was just like a one stoplight town kind of deal. What do you guys do for entertainment? And he said, if we get really bored, we go ride a bull. Like one of the guys will go ride a bull. And I'm like, what? And he said, yeah, it's a cow town. It's a country town in South Central Alabama. But I was like, if you ever do that, get some video and send it to me. He unfortunately never did, but he was a great guy. His brother's a really nice guy too. And to be honest, I don't think there's anybody you're going to find that's going to be a better representative team first attitude to get to the top. Like from where his body was at that point, getting ready to go into his senior year to where he's at now, like 280, 285, something like that. playing at Auburn. He might be just under that because they ran the 40. Those guys usually lose a little weight, but I don't think you're going to find many better human beings than what Keldric Faulk was. He was pretty awesome. Let's see if there's anybody else in here that I know. I remember seeing Avion Terrell. He was a freshman in high school at the time at a camp, and he was already standing out. I asked the guy that was running the camp, "Who's that?" And he told me. I'm like, oh, "Okay, he must be the little brother of." And he's like, "Yep, he's a real dude, and he's going to be really, really good." To finish out, looking at this list, I just remember C.J. Allen. I didn't get to see him play live in high school, but I thought he was a great linebacker. I loved his film, but I wish I had a chance to have met him, but he was really good too. So comments in the chat, anything you want to say, anybody you want to bring up, any questions you have, fire away. But those are some of the guys that I know from the first round, and that's quite a bit of fun, to be honest with you. Katie, what's going on? It's the intangibles that separate great from good. That applies to everything. There's a lot of truth in that, to be honest with you. Guys like, let's just use Caleb Downs. There aren't many people like Caleb. There probably never will be too many guys like Caleb. But Jeremiyah Love, like, he was one of the hardest guys I've ever tried to read. No, I just couldn't do it. Doesn't say much, same expression. And then you got a guy like Francis, who's humongous personality, but very positive, very happy-go-lucky. I mean, he even told me that, like, he wanted me to come out to the island with him and run a camp or whatever. And like, we go out in the jungle and dig up roots and stuff like his ancestors did. Like, he's into it. He's full on. So there's all kinds of little things with the intangibles. If you ever want to hear a story, Francis Mauigoa is a great one. Let's see. Katie, why was Mauigoa not a left tackle? I don't know. I think he could play it, but he's a power player. He was better at run blocking than pass protection, in my experience. So maybe that's it. Maybe he was just more comfortable playing to the right. Some people even thought he was going to be a guard. I don't know. He might play some guard in the NFL, especially later on in his career, because he's a horse. You're not going to run over Francis. He literally, as a freshman, measured like all the strength tests together, had the highest score like in the history of the school for like strength index or whatever it is, something like that. That's as a freshman. So that shows you what kind of athlete that young man is. Katie, I thought Love was underutilized in the Miami game in 2025. He was, but to put it mildly, that was CJ Carr's first game, and he kept calling RPOs, and he just threw the ball. They should have gave the ball just directly to Love more. I think that's pretty straightforward. But if they played that game later in the year when CJ was more comfortable, I'm sure Jeremiyah would have gotten a lot more carries. But I digress. You play the games when they are scheduled. As for what's going on the rest of the week, I'm just going to be a short show here, but I think that we're going to kind of start diving into more of the spring practice chatter. I need to look into some of the schools. If anybody here today, Katie or anybody else, has a comment about somebody they want to hear about, starting positions, or if it's a quarterback battle, if there's somebody that you want me to discuss, fire away. I'm curious about several schools. Indiana's interesting. Obviously, Fernando Mendoza is no longer going to be a part of the Hoosiers program, but there's a lot of things going on, and it's fun. So pick some schools out. You can message me on X at FBScout_Florida. That's FBScout_Florida on X. Same thing on Instagram. It's the exact same handle. But thank you very much for checking out the Portal Podcast. We will see you again soon right here. And by the way, if you're on Apple, please give us a 5-star review.